Welcome to Teaching Mastery Academy, the podcast that equips course creators with the tools, insights, and strategies to teach with confidence, create real impact, and become the go-to experts in their industries. I'm your host, Francesca Hudson, CEO of the Classic High School Teacher and Teaching Mastery Academy. If you've ever felt that your content is powerful, but you're not reaching your audience the way you want, or if you're ready to master the art of teaching and elevate your courses to new heights, you're in the right place, my friends. Each episode, we'll dive into the science of how people learn, explore innovative teaching methods, and uncover the best ways to transform your knowledge into engaging, life-changing experiences for your students. Whether you're just getting started or you've been in the game for years, I'm here to help you craft lessons that resonate, connect with your audience on a deeper level, and ultimately create the abundance and the success that you deserve. Are you ready to become the best teacher in your field? Then let's get started. Welcome back to Teaching Mastery Academy. It is so good to have you join me on the show today. This episode is a good one for any of you out there who have been weighing up whether or not to get on board with the whole digital course creation industry, or what do they call it? The course creator economy. And you've got a really good expertise, you've got a solid base of knowledge, but you are just unsure about how to turn it into a course. How do you teach it? Because remember, teaching is a different skill. So today we are tackling the challenge that if you're an expert in your field trying to create a course, you've probably faced this challenge head on. And maybe you didn't expect to struggle with it. You know your field inside and out. You've spent years, maybe even decades immersed in it, perfecting your skills and expanding your knowledge. But then when it comes time to teach it, to share all that expertise in a way that truly lands with your audience, suddenly things aren't so clear. It's a frustration that so many course creators face, and yet it's not talked about enough. You know that you're an expert. You know that your knowledge and your skills have carried you to this point, and you're passionate about sharing what you know to help others. But when you sit down to actually teach it, you find yourself hitting a wall. Translating your expertise into lessons that are easy for students to understand and apply can feel really overwhelming and slightly intimidating for a lot of people. You might think, why don't my students get this as fast as I did? Or maybe you feel like, is my knowledge just too big or too advanced to fit into a teachable format? But here's the thing, your knowledge is big, it is complex, and that's part of what makes you such an amazing expert. But when we try to bring all that depth into a teaching format, we quickly discover that expertise and teaching are two very different skills. It's like a struggle. It's a struggle many course creators face, how to simplify complex information without watering it down, how to keep the depth and the value of what you know, while making it accessible and engaging for students who don't have the years of experience that you do. If you're nodding along or feeling that knot of frustration because you've experienced this firsthand, then this episode is for you. It's for every expert who felt the frustration of pouring their heart into a course only to feel like the magic of their expertise got lost in translation. Today, we're unpacking this issue, breaking down exactly why it's so challenging to turn expertise into engaging lessons, and most importantly, what you can do about it. My hope, my intention for this podcast is to help you bridge that gap so that you can feel confident that your students are really getting what you're teaching and get excited about it too, because we want to celebrate our knowledge, because we know that what we're teaching other people are going to help them in their lives. It's going to solve some of those pain points that we've been through ourselves. So it's exciting when we can get the teach part of it right. It's really, really fun. It's really exciting. But let's start by talking about something called the expert's trap. I like to call it the expert's trap. If you're an expert trying to teach your knowledge, you may have already fallen into this trap without even realizing it. And here's how it works. When you know your subject so deeply, it's easy to assume that other people, in other words, your students, already have a certain level of understanding. We just naturally assume that. You assume that they're familiar with the basics and background of your field, so you skip ahead, diving into the good stuff. But here's the catch. They're not where you are. They don't have the same foundation that you built over the years of experience, practice, study. And that's why, even if you're pouring amazing knowledge into your course with so much value, your students might feel lost or very overwhelmed. Think of it this way. As an expert, you've climbed a mountain of knowledge. You've got up the trails, navigated around the obstacles, and made it to the summit. But when you start teaching, your students are still at the base of that mountain. If you start talking to them like they're halfway up, they'll have no idea how to follow along. You might find yourself using specialized terminology, making big leaps between concepts, or expecting them to understand why something is important when they've never seen it before. There's a lot of assumptions that as course teachers, we tend to make about our students' prior knowledge or base knowledge. And one of the biggest reasons experts fall into this trap is that they're simply too close to the content themselves. When you know a topic inside out, it's hard to step back and see the journey from a beginner's perspective. You can feel like certain ideas or steps are so obvious they don't need to be explained, but the reality is those foundational steps are critical for your students. Skipping over them doesn't just leave gaps in their understanding, it can make them feel confused, frustrated, and even discouraged from continuing with the course. Let's put this into a concrete example. I'll give you a concrete example. Imagine a tech expert teaching a course on cloud computing. To her, cloud computing is second nature. She's worked with it for years and can dive into the intricacies of data encryption, multi-tenant architectures, and data migration with ease. They are some big words for the rest of us. But for her students, many of whom may only have a basic understanding of data storage, the terms she's using feel like foreign language. In fact, if you're listening to this podcast now and you've never even dipped your toes into cloud computing, they're foreign language to you and me too. So this tech expert teaching cloud computing, she's talking about the what and the how without slowing down to explain the why. Her students need context to see the value in each step and understand how the pieces fit together. But all they hear is complex jargon. All you and I hear is complex jargon. Now, it's not about dumping down the content. Not at all. It's about finding a way to make complex information accessible without losing depth. That tech expert could start by explaining how cloud storage is like a virtual filing cabinet or comparing encryption to a lock and key that protects personal belongings. So we're beginning to introduce storytelling into our teaching, or we are beginning to introduce imagery. These analogies give her students something familiar to latch onto, building their confidence and creating a bridge from what they know to what they're learning. So if you're listening and realizing that you might be falling into the expert's trap, don't worry, you're not alone. This is a very common experience for course creators. Remember, it's not about removing the depth of your knowledge. Your expertise is what makes your course valuable. The goal here is to translate that depth in a way that meets your students where they are. In fact, the more accessible you can make your knowledge, the more deeply your students will connect with it. They'll feel like they're progressing and they'll trust you as the guide who understands where they're coming from. And that, my friend, is a powerful feeling. But I don't want you to worry and think that if we are simplifying or dumbing down our knowledge, that we're losing the depth. It doesn't mean that at all. The idea that simplifying your content doesn't mean you're making it less valuable. In fact, simplifying is one of the most powerful tools in teaching because it clarifies what's essential and creates a strong foundation for learners to build on. Think of it like building a house. If the foundation is shaky or missing critical support beams, everything you try to add on top will be unstable, right? By focusing on the fundamentals, you're giving your students something solid and reliable to stand on as they advance. You're not dumbing down the course. You're doing the opposite. You're building a really solid foundation. When you're simplifying your content, you're not watering it down or leaving out important details. You're actually refining it, making sure that each lesson or module is focused, clear, and intentional. This approach doesn't just make it easier for your students to understand, it helps them connect with your material more deeply because they're not overwhelmed by complexity right from the start. You're laying out stepping stones, showing them the path forward without throwing them into the deep end before they're ready. Now, here's something a lot of people don't realize. Simplicity in teaching is a skill. It's not something that happens on its own. In fact, it's often harder to distill your expertise into simple, digestible pieces than it is to explain it in all its complexity. Simplifying takes time, takes practice, takes a lot of intention. It requires you to look at your content through the eyes of a beginner to really understand where they're starting from and what they need at each step of the way. It's the art of teaching. And just like any other art, it requires careful design. I tell you, a common misconception is that if something is deemed simple, then it must have been easy to create. But as any experienced educator will tell you, the simpler and clearer something is to the learner, the more effort went into making it that way. It's like ducks in a pond, calm on the top, but frantically paddling underneath. So designing a simple learning experience means you're curating your content, choosing what to leave out or what to put in, just as carefully as you choose what to include. And in Teaching Mastery Academy, we dive into techniques for this very process. We focus on skills like chunking information, using analogies that resonate, and sequencing lessons so that students can build a strong understanding step by step. To illustrate, imagine you're teaching someone how to play the piano. As an expert, you know the complexities of finger positioning, rhythm, and even musical theory. But for a beginner, all of that at once would be very overwhelming. Instead, you might start by teaching them a single, simple scale. They'll practice that scale until they understand the basic movement if you're comfortable with it. And this doesn't mean that they're not going to learn all those complex skills. They will down the track. But they're going to do it in a way that allows each piece to add up to a complete picture over time. The simplicity in the beginning builds the momentum that they need to tackle more advanced ideas later on. The result of this approach is actually a deeper understanding because it's gradual, intentional, and it's designed with the learner's journey in mind. As the expert, you know the end destination, but by simplifying, you're guiding them along a path that feels achievable rather than overwhelming for them. Your students will feel motivated, capable, and ready for the next step. And that's a huge part of what makes teaching so impactful. The more you embrace the power of simplicity, the more you're able to engage and connect with your learners, allowing them to make the steady progress, which in turn will lead to those huge transformations that you have promoted and promised at the start of your course. So if you've ever felt like simplifying your content is somehow selling your expertise short, I invite you to reframe it. Think of it as the art of designing experiences that truly resonate. And in Teaching Mastery Academy, we show you how to break down complex ideas in a way that keeps all their depth, value, and richness without overwhelming your students. By focusing on simplicity, you're not just teaching the what and the how, but you're building a true foundation that allows students to grow with confidence. And that's the magic of great teaching. One of the biggest challenges in teaching complex topics is striking that balance between depth and accessibility. As experts, we want to convey the richness of our field without overwhelming our students. And the key to this balance is in how we structure the learning journey. Think of it like guiding students through a museum of your expertise. You want them to appreciate each piece without feeling like they're being dragged from exhibit to exhibit at warp speed. Thinking of my children here when I give you that analogy. Maintaining depth isn't about removing complex ideas. It's about introducing them in a way that's manageable. To do this, we can focus on layering information gradually, letting each lesson build on the previous one. By starting with foundational ideas and then adding layers of complexity, we create a framework. We begin to create a framework that allows students to climb steadily rather than feel like they're diving straight into the deep end. To really showcase depth in a way that's engaging, it helps to use teaching techniques that guide students from concept to concept in a really structured way. And one effective approach is called progressive disclosure, where you introduce core concepts first and then reveal more intricate layers as students become comfortable. It's like peeling an onion, where each layer adds new understanding without overwhelming the learner. Another powerful engagement tool is storytelling. So stories provide context and they help students see how the concepts they're learning play out in real world situations. If you're teaching a business strategy, for instance, you might share a story of a company that applied a similar concept and then discuss the outcomes. So storytelling not only holds interest, but it also allows students to absorb complex ideas in a format that they're more likely to remember. Another way is through layered teaching, which is where you organize content in increasing levels of complexity, which is another great way to preserve depth. This approach allows each module or lesson to focus on a different layer of understanding. For example, if you're teaching a course on photography, you might start with the basics of lighting, then move on to exposure settings, and eventually tackle advanced composition techniques. So each layer builds on the last, creating a learning experience where depth feels natural and achievable rather than intimidating. This technique also encourages students to feel a real sense of progress. And as they move through each layer, they can see how concepts are interconnected, which helps them gain a holistic understanding of the topic without feeling overwhelmed by information all at once. Another way to keep students engaged while diving deep is to use active learning techniques. How important this one. Active learning asks students to work with the material directly, like applying concepts in exercises, working on projects, or engaging in discussions. There's that practical hands-on application of knowledge. So, for instance, if you're teaching a lesson on digital marketing, you might have students create a basic social media campaign for a hypothetical product. Because by doing so, your students will see the layers and the nuances of the topic come to life, gaining a hands-on experience that really deepens their understanding of the topic. And the result means that there's depth without intimidation, because the goal of using these strategies is to maintain depth in a way that's approachable. When students can see the connections between each piece of what they're learning, they're more likely to feel engaged and empowered. Teaching with layered structure, storytelling, progressive disclosure, and active learning creates a rich, meaningful experience for them. They're no longer just taking in isolated facts or concepts. They're actually experiencing the bigger picture in a way that feels achievable for them, which is incredibly motivating, both for them and for you as the course teacher. So if you're finding it challenging to bring all your expertise into a cohesive learning experience, remember that these small adjustments to structure and engagement can make a huge difference. By focusing on layered content and creating opportunities for active learning, put those two words in capital letters, active learning, you're setting your students up for a learning journey that's not only deep and valuable, but also enjoyable and accessible. And that's the kind of learning that really sticks. It's what your students will remember long after they've finished completing the course. Okay, so we've talked about breaking down our information so it doesn't overwhelm our students, but how do we know if what we're teaching is overwhelming? What are some signs that we could be looking for to make sure that our students aren't getting overwhelmed by the content that we're teaching? Because as course creators, it can be challenging to know when our content might be overwhelming for students. Sometimes we're so close to our material that it's hard to notice when it might be too dense or too complex. However, there are a few telltale signs that your students might be struggling to keep up, and I'll tell you what they are. If you find that students frequently need clarification, they ask the same questions repeatedly, or they appear disengaged, these might be indicators that they're not fully grasping the concepts, and that's okay. When students start to lose interest or disengage, it often means they're feeling lost or intimidated by the information. This can be frustrating for them and for you as the course creator. You may feel like you're speaking a different language. You might feel like you're explaining things that seem perfectly clear to you, but somehow aren't resonating with your students. And the disconnect can leave you wondering, why aren't they getting it? But more often than not, it's not a matter of capability. It's about presentation. If content feels too complex or lacks a clear structure, students can struggle to find the starting points they need to build real understanding. So how do you make your material more accessible without losing its depth? One effective approach is to use a framework to organize your content. A step-by-step framework breaks your expertise into core building blocks, if you like, which allows students to tackle each piece in a manageable way. Instead of presenting everything at once, you're guiding them through a structured path where each step builds on the last, creating a solid foundation as they go. However, creating a framework involves a few key steps. Firstly, start by setting clear learning objectives. What do you want your students to be able to understand or achieve by the end of each section or lesson? Clear objectives will help you identify the most important elements of your content, ensuring that each piece of information has a purpose. From there, you can break down the essential components of your topic into foundational building blocks. These are the concepts or skills students need to master before they move on to the more advanced material. So once you've identified these building blocks, focus on how each piece connects to the next. This is a crucial step in creating a smooth, logical flow that will prevent your students from feeling lost. For example, if you're teaching a course on social media marketing, we'll use the same example again, you might start with basic concepts like defining a target audience. And then you could gradually introduce more complex topics like analytics and engagement strategies. By the time you reach the advanced techniques, students will have a really solid understanding of the basics and be ready to deepen their knowledge. This approach not only makes the learning journey easier for students to follow, but also provides them with a sense of progress. Each time they understand a new concept or each time they master a skill, they will feel motivated to tackle the next step in your course. And as a creator, it can be incredibly rewarding to see that shift where students go from feeling lost to genuinely excited about each new lesson. That is the ultimate goal for us as teachers. So breaking down your expertise into a step-by-step framework can really transform how students experience your content. It allows them to approach even complex ideas with confidence, knowing that each step is leading them somewhere valuable. And for you, as the instructor, this method offers a way to deliver your knowledge in a way that's impactful, organised, and rewarding. By recognising the signs of when content might need a bit more structure, you're taking a huge step towards creating a course that really resonates with your students. Because it's really valuable to have a teaching system in place. Creating a successful course is about more than just sharing what you know. It's about creating a teaching system that guides students through a cohesive learning journey that you have created. Having a teaching system in place allows you to translate your expertise in a way that's both effective and engaging. Now, if you can create a well-designed system that organizes your content into clear structured modules, making it easy for students to follow and absorb and apply what they're learning, it's like providing a roadmap, showing your students how each piece connects to the next and leading them step by step towards their goals. So how do we create one? Well, a strong teaching system includes techniques like chunking the information that we discussed previously, which means breaking down complex topics into manageable sections. Rather than overwhelming students with too much at once, chunking makes each section feel approachable. You can also look at storytelling, which we talked about briefly as well, which is a very powerful technique because stories bring abstract concepts to life, making them more memorable and relatable. And then there are engaging frameworks like step-by-step guides or interactive exercises that allow your students to work through complex material in a really structured way. These tools will give your students a sense of progress and make it easier for them to retain what they're learning. So to see this approach in action, let's imagine you're creating a course on holistic wellness for busy professionals. This is a topic that's rich in information from nutrition and stress management to mindfulness and sleep techniques. So for someone who's new to wellness, diving into all of this at once can feel quite overwhelming. But with a structured teaching system, you can make this content really approachable and enjoyable to learn, even for someone with a packed schedule who's super busy. So you might start the course, for example, with a foundational model called Wellness Basics, let's say. And this module could cover essential concepts like understanding stress triggers or building small daily habits and creating a personal wellness vision. Once your students are comfortable with these basics, then they're ready to dive into the next module, perhaps focusing on nutrition essentials for energy, where they learn how to make balanced meals that don't require hours in the kitchen. And then later modules could introduce mindfulness techniques, exercise routines that fits into a busy lifestyle, and even time management strategies that support their overall well-being. So with each module, students are building on what they've already learned. And by the time they reach topics like sleep optimization or advanced stress management techniques, they've got the basics down and feel confident. This progression, if you like, turns something that initially felt daunting into a series of manageable, empowering steps. And for you, the course creator, it's so rewarding to see students implementing these changes, gradually transforming their daily routines and finding new energy to take on life's challenges. With this step-by-step approach, your students are so much more likely to have multiple aha moments along the way. So maybe they realize that wellness doesn't have to mean an intense morning routine, but instead can be something simple like taking a few minutes to practice mindful breathing before the start of their workday. Or they discover that small balanced meals actually make them feel more energized than big elaborate ones. That each insight builds their motivation and they feel excited to continue, knowing that every small change they make is adding up to a healthier, more balanced life. Having a teaching system in place also benefits you as the course creator. When you know your content is organised in a way that flows and builds, you're able to teach with clarity and intention, creating an experience that's rewarding for both you and your students. You're not just presenting information, you're guiding them through a thoughtfully designed process that makes learning really exciting and impactful. This is where the magic of teaching happens, where complex ideas start to feel intuitive. I love that word, intuitive. And students are genuinely engaged every step of the way. So by systemizing your expertise, you're transforming your course from a collection of facts into a meaningful journey. Each module, lesson, and example serves a purpose, bringing students closer to real understanding. And for you, this approach brings a sense of fulfillment that comes from watching your students connect with your content in a really beautiful, deep, and lasting way. Systemizing isn't about losing flexibility or creativity, not at all. It's about structuring your knowledge so that every piece falls into place, creating a learning experience that really resonates with your students. When it comes to creating memorable courses, the goal isn't just to break things down into manageable steps. It's about designing a learning experience that's both engaging and transformative. Imagine leaving each of your students with a sense of accomplishment and clarity. They're not only learning from you, they're having those powerful aha moments and building skills they can apply long after the course is over. By focusing on simplification and depth, you're creating a foundation that turns each lesson into something meaningful. You're building momentum that keeps your students excited and motivated. With a solid teaching framework, you can take that same approach and apply it consistently across all of your courses. This framework becomes a tool that grows with you, allowing you to teach topics or expand your offerings in a way that feels structured and impactful. Instead of starting from scratch each time, you'll have a blueprint that helps you create engaging content and deepen your students' understanding course after course. Sound good? So ultimately, having a strong teaching system empowers you as an educator. It allows you to reach your students in a way that you might not have thought possible. You're creating courses that don't just convey knowledge, but you're leaving a lasting impact. And this shift is from simply knowing a subject to teaching it effectively is so transformative, both for you and for your students. Your knowledge becomes a vehicle for change. You're helping your students not only understand complex topics, but apply them confidently in their own lives. As an educator, this journey is incredibly fulfilling. It's about scaling your impact and reaching more students, making your expertise accessible, relatable, and deeply meaningful. If you're ready to take your teaching to this level, to move from sharing information to creating a transformative experience, then the next step is to build that framework, refine those skills, and give your students the powerful learning journey they deserve. And we do that through Teaching Mastery Academy, our complete, simple, clear system that will take your expertise from knowledgeable to transformative. It is your one-stop shop for everything that you need to know about how to teach your course effectively. You might have the knowledge, the expertise, the experience. You've got the stories ready to go, the analogies. It's just learning how do we then apply those? How do we tap into that well of knowledge that you've got to be able to inspire your students and really get those course completion rates up? By becoming a master educator, it allows you to reach and empower your students in a way that you never imagined. It's about scaling not just your expertise, but your impact. How many more people can you help with the impact that you give through incredible teaching? We all remember that one teacher from school that has stayed with us in our memories. Why is that? Why were they so inspiring? Why do we remember them so fondly? Let you become that teacher in your niche for your students. Let's tap in to all the teaching skills and techniques and secrets to turn you into a truly impactful teacher. Now, the doors to The doors to Teaching Mastery Academy are closed at the moment, but I'll leave a link in the show notes to sign up to the waitlist so that you can be the first to be notified before the general public when we open the doors next. It's a VIP waitlist that I have got exclusively for this podcast. So I strongly invite you to sign up to that so that you can be the front of the line to learn the techniques, to learn the skills, the secrets about how impactful teaching starts. It starts with you. It starts with heart. It starts with the impact that you want to have on the world, on your niche, on your students' lives. And I cannot wait to have you join me when the doors open to TMA. So thank you for joining me today. We've covered a lot of ground, from the challenges of translating expertise into engaging, understandable lessons to the strategies that can make that process easier and more impactful. Remember, effective teaching doesn't come naturally to everyone. It's a skill, one that can be learned, practiced and refined, which is exactly what we teach in TMA. And as we've discussed, creating a meaningful learning experience involves more than just sharing information. It's about guiding students on a journey that leaves them feeling motivated, feeling empowered, and equipped to apply what they've learned. So if today's conversation really resonated with you and you're feeling ready to dive deeper into the art of teaching, I'd love to invite you to take the next step. Teaching Mastery Academy is a space designed for experts like you who want to go beyond delivering the content and truly connect with their students on a deeper, more impactful level. If you're ready to become the kind of educator who makes a lasting difference, Teaching Mastery Academy, or TMA for short, is here to support you every step of the way. And as I say, I will link the waitlist in the show notes so that you will be first to be notified when we open the doors. Thank you again for tuning in, and I can't wait to see where your journey as an educator takes you. Until next time, keep inspiring, keep growing, and remember, the world needs your knowledge, shared in a way that only you can teach. See you next time.
That's a wrap for today's episode of Teaching Mastery Academy. I hope you walked away with actionable insights and new ideas that will elevate your teaching and help you create courses that truly resonate with your students. If you enjoyed this episode and want to keep the momentum going, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a beat. And if you found value in today's conversation, I'd love it if you could leave a 5-star review. It helps other course creators like you discover the show and join this amazing community of educators. For more tips, resources, and exclusive content, make sure to click on the link in my show notes. I've got a ton of freebies and tools waiting for you. You can also follow me on Instagram at Teaching Mastery Academy for daily inspiration and behind-the-scenes updates. Remember, my friend, becoming a master teacher is a journey, and I'm here with you every step of the way. Until next time, keep teaching, keep creating, and keep changing lives.